They say we'll never forget this year. The isolation, the fear, the loss. They say that 2020 will leave a permanent mark. That historians will spend decades writing about these months. That our grandchildren will spend semesters studying these weeks. But while 2020 has broken every norm, it will not break us. And while 2020 has brought unprecedented adversity, adversity has never stopped us before. And even though we're now separated, our hearts are more united than ever before. They say we'll never forget this year, that 2020 will leave a permanent mark. We wouldn't have it any other way. Today's pressure will forge tomorrow's clarity. Today's dead end will spark tomorrow's innovation. Today's resistance will hone tomorrow's strength. And today's loss will deepen tomorrow's love. The most important pursuits have never been easy. And so, despite all odds, despite all adversity, we will uncompromisingly pursue pure products, pure business practices, pure love for humanity, pure intentions, together. We say 2020 is just the beginning.
I want to officially welcome all of you to our Persue 2020 dōTERRA Global Connection. This is our biggest gathering ever, with tens of thousands of you joining us from all around the world. We've been working very hard to prepare meaningful and valuable messages and training. I suppose it's not possible to duplicate the electric-like energy that happens when 30,000 of us are gathered together in person. And like you, we are looking forward to the return of those days. In the meantime, as we gather online, I do not think any of you will be disappointed in what you're going to experience in the next couple of days. Now, we are in the middle of unprecedented and challenging times, unequaled in nearly all of our memories. Sadly, we recognize that some of you have been directly impacted by this global virus. For all of those who have struggled, suffered loss, or are working to find a foothold today, please know that our thoughts and hopes are for many brighter moments ahead for you and for your families. You have our love and support. I'm sure there are many more of you who may be experiencing significant economic stress. Few, if any of us, has escaped the fear, anxiety, frustration, or even anger that seem to be causing so much upheaval and discord in our world today. One of our goals over the next couple of days is to help restore trust and hope, perhaps something we all could use a little more of. In 2008, dōTERRA was in its infancy. The United States was entering the most severe recession it had ever experienced since the Great Depression of the 1930s. Confidence seemed to be at an all-time low. I imagine that many people likely looked at me and my partners with questioning, wondering eyes, wondering why we would even consider launching a business at that time. Truth is, at least in part, dōTERRA was deeply affected by our early circumstances and is what it is today because of when and how we began. dōTERRA was built on a foundation of sacrifice, scarcity of resources, and gratitude. For the first 13 months of our existence, none of the founders were paid. No one received any medical benefits. We had to be very conservative and very careful with our very limited resources. We didn't know if and when the recession would end. There was no crystal ball to tell us that everything would work out in time. We just knew that we felt inspired to build something that could change the world and that would bless many lives. We knew it would take a lot of effort, and we knew it would take time. We lived the principle of delayed gratification, hoping that our money would hold out, that rewards would come later, and that we could stay true to our mission and purpose and desires of our heart. Today, some of the challenges that we face feel very familiar, but today they are global in nature, extending far beyond the United States and impacting the entire world. When we look back and see the parallels between now and then, we appreciate that dōTERRA was built for times like this. Our deep commitment to purity, quality, seems to matter even more than it ever did before. Now, few, if any, could have predicted the extremes of our current climate, including us. But you can have confidence in dōTERRA. We've continued to govern the company along the same principles that were so important to us in our beginning. We are grateful that we haven't needed to lay off a single employee during this crisis of the past 6 months. As a company, we have been rewarded with a team that has dug in, embraced the new and ever-changing paradigm, and has done truly amazing things. While we never expected a global pandemic, we have always planned carefully, adding protections, building redundancy, preparing to weather any storm. We have a plan. In fact, we have a plan B and a plan C. And because of our beginnings, this has become part of our very nature. And today, we are free to pursue our mission, striving to pursue what's pure in everything that we do. Looking back, we're grateful for the difficult times and the galvanizing effects of sacrifice and the impact that our conservative approach to business has had on our ethos and our foundation. Today, dōTERRA has become the gold standard in essential oils in the entire industry. And it's not just us saying so. We've taken our global botanical network and scientific and medical partnerships places that others simply cannot go or are not willing to follow. Purity and quality are the strengths of dōTERRA. And as I said earlier, now it matters more than ever. We've had to really scramble the past 6 months, working hard to meet the increased demands for our products. Our amazing team has embraced these challenges, and as you will hear from some of them throughout the event, I'm sure that you'll agree that our capabilities are greater. Our supply is healthier, and production is increasing. We are significantly stronger and better prepared to meet the future challenges. Some amazing achievements have happened this past year. Despite the challenges and constraints of a pandemic, we've managed to complete significant humanitarian projects around the world. One of these is the hospital in Somaliland, serving over 500,000 people in one of the most remote and difficult regions of the world. Even the World Health Organization was stunned recently upon learning of the completion of this project. You'll be hearing more about this, as well as numerous other significant humanitarian projects around the globe, all made possible because of you, your generosity, and your passion. Nothing of significance ever happens without passion. Of late, some of our priorities have shifted closer to home. We are excited and committed to taking action and doing our part with the support of our new Inclusion and Diversity Committee, helping all of those who feel marginalized are perhaps less visible. Together, we will learn, and we hope to soften hearts, to open minds, to facilitate healing. We're working to build a more united, stronger dōTERRA family. Perhaps some of you have found some silver linings during this pandemic experience. Perhaps you've taken a little more time to become reacquainted with your family members or friends. Perhaps you've used this time to refill your cup and to recharge your batteries. Hindsight is always 20/20. For me, understanding the past helps me to appreciate and better understand the future. And the future is very bright. So what does the future look like? As I said, it helps to look back at the past. Almost exactly 6 years ago, Emily Wright and I were returning from the first trip to Somalia. We were gone for about 2 weeks on that trip. While we were gone, the entire company moved to this new, beautiful global campus. I remember going back to our old, now empty offices that weekend, where we had our humble beginnings. As I cleared out my office and boxed up my personal effects, I found myself completely alone in a completely empty building. As I walked around in the silence, observing the small 10-foot by 10-foot room where we had our very first product store, I found myself saying, what were we thinking? We were starting with nothing. It was a recession, so much fear and uncertainty. Yet we had hope, perhaps a fool's hope, but we locked arms with our friends who also had hope, who went on to become great leaders, influencing so many and doing so much good. Today feels like another beginning. I hope that you will look to the future with hope and join us in building your future, increasing your circle of influence, and making a difference in this amazing world. Remember, when you bring the power of the many together in your teams to form the power of one, that's when the miracles begin to happen. That's when we begin to discover that each of us possesses far more potential for influence and good than we've ever imagined. Now it's my honor to introduce Simone Lesu. Simone joined dōTERRA in 2016 and has made a huge impact on the entire dōTERRA family. His optimism and love of essential oils is contagious. Simone is part of everyone's family. Please join me in welcoming your host for this morning, Director of U.S. Sales, Simone Lesu.
dōTERRA family and friends, welcome to Persue 2020. Whether you're a seasoned vet and you've had a handful of conventions under your belt, maybe all of them, or this is your very first one, whatever the case is, we're absolutely thrilled to have you. Now, this being a global event, we know we have a lot of people tuning in from all over the world. We acknowledge that, but drop a comment below exactly where you're coming from. Here's the thing, wherever you are and whatever time zone you're in, we hope that you're excited for an amazing event. But before we move into the action-packed agenda today, I'd like to bring it back to why we do what we do. Our mission at dōTERRA is to change lives. And this is a charge that we're constantly pursuing. Pursue, the theme of this entire event. The definition of pursue is a dedicated engagement of purpose. We pursue pure products, pure business practices, pure love of humanity, and pure intentions. Now, we'll dive into what that truly means throughout the next few days, but just know that this is a beautiful, beautiful movement that millions around the world are so proud to be part of. Now, my friends, from start to end, you'll learn what makes dōTERRA different, how we produce the purest essential oils on the planet, and how together we're truly making a difference on a global scale. Today, we've got panels of experts on a variety of great topics. Our founding executives will go back to the very beginning of dōTERRA. You'll take a journey through our labs to different parts of the world. Today, you'll learn why purity and potency truly matter.
What does it mean for a product to be pure? Is it the strongest? The most effective? Or does it also mean that it was the most resilient? In a world full of toxic imitations and adulterated imposters, it resisted. Never allowing efficiency to give way to embellishments. It never chose profit over potency. It chose to be exactly what the world desperately needs. Something real. Something to believe in. Something that lifts, inspires, connects, heals. A pure product is more than just a seal on a bottle or the highest industry certifications and endorsements. It is the thousands of decisions made along the way that insisted the ideal and protected the promise. A pure product is a mission, a belief that by adding nothing, it, in turn, offers everything.
Now, oftentimes we're asked, what makes our essential oils different? It's a common question. When you're serving your family, your loved ones, your communities, quality matters. We know our essential oils will do what we say they will do, and quality brings that confidence. This has been in the dōTERRA DNA from day one.
Well, sometimes I look back and I just wonder, what were we thinking? What was I thinking?
We went for a long, long period of time with no resources. And when I mean no resources, I mean no resources.
People told us we were crazy to go all in. You know, is this really going to work? I think some of the most beautiful things can emerge through trial and through difficult times.
I had been a physician for a long period of time, and I'd had a patient who came to see me, and they would ask me, Dr. Hill, what do you think about the essential oils? And I made the mistake one time of saying, I think that's one of the craziest things I've ever heard. She looked me right in the eye and she said, I am so disappointed to hear that, because that's done more for me than you or any of your colleagues or anyone has ever done for me. And it intrigued me. And over time, I became more intrigued. I became involved with essential oils. And now for the last several decades, this is all that I have focused on and all that I have done.
I remember when I first came into the essential oil industry, I thought they were voodoo oils. I thought they were really, really strange. It wasn't long before I started using oils on my kids, and I was amazed at what I was able to do and how it empowered me as a mom to take charge of my family's healthcare.
So I was a huge skeptic. Parents were educators. My father's a professor of physics. So I just wasn't raised with anything but allopathic Western medicine. I learned over the years how effective they were and can be, especially if they're pure.
After working 10 years in the essential oil industry, I found myself leaving for integrity purposes, because I knew that essential oils had to be pure. The desire of my heart was just to go home and raise my children. And I hadn't been home very long before my husband came to me and said, there's something more you're supposed to do. And as he said this to me, I actually was very angry with him, because my heart said, I want to be home with my kids. And he said, sweetheart, you're not listening. There is something you're supposed to do with Dave and Dr. Hill with these oils. And I said, what do you mean, these oils? I've tried all the essential oils out there. There's nothing that meets the quality standards our family needs to use for our health care. And he smiled at me and he said, I know. You're supposed to find them. Stop thinking with your head and start thinking with your heart. And it was in that moment that I knew. It all came together, and I had such a grand vision of going out and finding the world's most pure, most potent essential oils and educating mothers like me how to take charge of their health care. So it was in that moment, before fear took over, that I picked up the phone and I called Dave.
And Emily Wright called me at the time and just said,
what if we could go out and source the most pure essential oils on the planet and bring them to the world in a mainstream fashion? And he got really emotional. And Dave doesn't get emotional.
And actually it was that right then and there, that was the genesis for me. And I just kind of felt strongly like, yeah, we're gonna start a company.
So I hung up the phone with Dave, I picked up the phone, and I called Dr. Hill. And as I called him, I still remember he kind of giggled. And I said, Doc, this isn't funny. I'm serious about this. What if we could go out and find these pure oils like we've always wanted to do? And what if we could educate people to really understand the power behind these oils? And he said, no, Emily, I'm not laughing because I think your idea is crazy. I'm laughing because I was just getting ready to call you and ask you the very same question.
It started with an initial little small meeting in an Italian restaurant.
In the far corner, and we met for 5.5 hours until they finally kicked us out of the restaurant because we weren't buying food anymore. And we just started to dream.
We would meet anywhere we could find some space to meet. And it was in some strange places. Of course, the basement of the Normal Library was one.
We got too rambunctious and they finally kicked us out of the library.
Sometimes it was in the basement of our homes.
I remember not telling my kids, that I was unemployed and starting a new thing, but the dad was working on a project in the basement. As I did the business plan, I started to realize that this was going to be big. I just knew that with such a good team and product that had changed our lives, we felt like this was going to be significant.
So as we began in the spring of 2008, that's when we had a massive falling out with the housing market in the United States.
And there was a lot of panic and a lot of fear. We looked at starting this company. The first thing you think is, I got to raise money. I've got to get capital. And we set out to do that initially. And actually ended up, the four of us, back in New York City, visiting with some very high-profile people.
And as we gathered together that next morning at that conference table, and we've got, all of these Manhattan-style managers that are meeting with us, and they quizzed us for hours. Finally, at the end of the day, they looked at us and they said, we believe that your business model is going to work. We believe that you will be successful, and we want to fund your venture.
We'll give you $5 million. And we all, of course, felt extremely elated.
They were willing to fund the company, but of course they were interested in 51% and control.
And I just remember the feeling we had as we walked away from that conference table. And the four of us found ourselves in front of the Statue of Liberty. And I remember looking across the water.
Almost as if on cue, as I recall, we all just grew somewhat silent.
And as we looked out over the water, and I looked at the Statue of Liberty, what rung true to me is we're doing this to give people freedom. And if we take their money, we can't make people free. And we can't make this dream that we have a reality because they'll never allow us to bring the quality of essential oils that we know we have to light. Because they'll be looking for an exit strategy, they'll be looking for a return on their investment, and that can't be part of the equation.
I remember standing right next to Dave Stirling, and Dave looked at me and in kind of a somewhat shocking way, he asked me, how much money do you have, Doc? And I said, I don't know. And he said, how much can you pull together? And I said, I don't know. And he asked each one of us in succession, and before we left the park that afternoon, we had made the decision that we were unable to take any resources from anybody, and instead, we would all leverage everything we have.
We took the equity out of our homes, we cashed out 401ks, we liquidated everything we owned in order for this dream to come to fruition.
And so as I expressed this to my wife, I remember very clearly, she just looked at me and said, well, I trust you. You'll take care of us, and we'll be fine.
And we had family members even come to us to say, you're foolish. Your family is going to be homeless. So we went all in, everything. We didn't hold anything back. We thought it would be for just a couple of months that we went without any income, but it was 13 months. Those final months, we're eating almonds and yogurt and telling our kids they can't go to dance practice and they can't play sports because we don't have enough money. But having that belief that it was all going to be worth it. And I remember a day that we had $5,000 left in our account. $5,000 because we had just put together this big oil order. And we didn't know how we were going to make payroll. We didn't know how we were going to make commissions. And just to see how doors open every single time, as long as we continued to step forward, that doors open.
People ask me sometimes, how are you guys able to do what you did? And, but everybody rolled their sleeves up and we did every job. We did this job, this job, this job.
I was supposed to go out and find these precious oils. So I started calling people, and every single person would say, of course, our oils are 100% pure. And that's when I realized almost all essential oils that are sold out there are sold through brokers.
These brokers were very smart people, often having very sophisticated labs. And the oils were almost always changed. Most were not pure, most were synthetically created.
I had probably 100+ different samples that had been sent to my home. And every time we would meet, Dave, Dr. Hill would say, Emily, have you found the oils yet? I'd have to say, not yet. Like, are we going down the right path? Is this really what we're supposed to do? And I remember one beautiful day, I opened up my doorstep and 5 oils showed up all on the same day. It was frankincense, lavender, tea tree, lemon, and peppermint. As I smelled these bottles, I called up Dave and I called up Dr. Hill and I said, I found the oils. They said, don't you dare open them until we're all together. We knew that these oils were absolutely pure, and it gave us just enough confidence, just enough faith to continue stepping forward. I remember that first discussion we had. We talked about the culture of the company. What type of soul do we want dōTERRA to have? And we realized that these oils are experiential. And we realized it had to be a person-to-person model. We had to bring people together. We've got to have a culture of giving back. We have to have a culture of caring. Locking arms with the people who are putting the seeds in the ground, who are harvesting these products. It's making sure that their needs are met.
As I look back on it today with dōTERRA, it's overwhelming to me to see the impact it is around the world. There's a lot of sacrifice, but again, those are days we look back on, with some pride. Sacrifice is a really important piece in setting the foundation.
Today, we've empowered nearly 8 million families all around the globe. We're now filling 315,000 bottles of oil every single day. And just to think about it on that scale just warms my heart, knowing that every single bottle is changing somebody's life on both sides of the bottle. I think this work has such purpose. It's like, how can we stop?
We have single-handedly changed the acceptance of essential oils in science and in medicine.
We are so committed to this work. We are so humbled to be stewards of what nature has created so perfectly for us. And we're so grateful for all of our amazing employees, for all of our amazing wellness advocates, for all of our amazing customers all around the world.
We haven't changed in our mission. We haven't changed in our purpose. We're still true to those things that very early on were important. If doing the right thing was important then, doing the right thing is important now. If helping and giving service to other people was important then, it's important now. If sourcing oils differently and doing what had not been done before was important then, it's important now. We feel like, as crazy as it sounds, we're still just beginning.
From those humble beginnings to today,
We welcome you to dōTERRA's campus here in Pleasant Grove, Utah. I'm Andrew O'Hare, dōTERRA's Chief Commercial Officer, and with me today are all 7 of dōTERRA's founding executives: Greg Cook, Mark Wolfert, Dave Stirling, Emily Wright, Dr. Hill, Rob Young, and Corey Lindley. Thank you so much for being with us here today. And first, a question for everyone. In 30 seconds or fewer, can you tell us your favorite essential oil and why? Corey, let's get started with you.
Sure. You mean other than On Guard soft gels, right? How do you live without those? I think for me, every morning I love to combine Siberian fir and green mandarin and use them with fractionated coconut oil in a shaving product. Can't convince Emily to do a shaving product, but for me, I do my own blend. And it reminds me of what's going on in Russia, what's going on in Brazil, and everywhere around the world. And it's a great way to start the day.
I'll repeat Corey's favorite. I'm an On Guard fan. I use more On Guard in our home than anything else. Lately, though, I've been using spearmint in my water. I love spearmint too. Nice. But I love all of the oils, of course. So.
It's hard to pick a favorite.
It is.
Yeah, absolutely.
I guess I'm a creature of habit because I'm struggling trying to figure out which one is my favorite. So maybe I'll just speak to the cycle that I'm in right now. And one of the oils that I love and I use a great deal of is copaiba. I use that every single day, and I use it in multiples of ways. I'm using it topically. I'm using it internally. And for me, it's made a big difference in my daily routines and how I feel overall.
I can't narrow it down to just one. Can I choose 3?
No.
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 You have to pick a favorite.
Rules,
We've
Dave.
all
What's
chosen
new?
one. You get one oil.
All right, so yarrow, I love what it's doing for my skin, and I love to use it internally, just kind of bring me back to more of I guess a prime state is what I say with yarrow palm. But I can't live without my rose, especially over the heart, oil of self-love.
One oil.
But Immortelle too.
Oh, she's still going to do all
Right?
3.
You
All
went with 3 anyway.
It's all the restorative oils, and if you're on a desert island and you can't have anything but Immortelle, you're set.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Good.
Okay, then I don't have to just do one either, right? So I was going to say copaiba and the soft gels every morning, every night for me, but I have to mention my happy oil, though. My happy oil is cheer of late.
Oh, nice.
I just love cheer.
That's a good one.
So.
It is hard to just choose one oil, and at night I diffuse a few different oils, but there is one oil that I could not live without. Every morning after I exercise, and yes, I do work out in the morning. You know, you can't tell,
We
but
could
I do.
tell, Mark. We could.
Getting in and out of bed doesn't count, though.
I get in the steamer and I use Breathe.
Yeah.
And for someone, especially in these times, and you're getting older, and they say keeping a healthy respiratory system, and I just love Breathe because it really strengthens my respiratory system, helps clear things out.
I think my favorite product that dōTERRA has is the Rose hand lotion. That product alone has funded millions and millions of dollars of charitable efforts and had an impact on the world more than any other Healing Hands project that we do. It's just really my favorite product.
Great. Well, thank you, Greg. One thing that makes dōTERRA different from everyone else is how we source our oils. Greg, Juanita from North Carolina has a question, and she asks, can you describe what co-impact sourcing is for those unfamiliar with this term, and why co-impact sourcing is so important to dōTERRA?
Thank you, Juanita. Great question. A few years ago, we found ourselves growing much greater than any other company had ever done in the essential oil world. More than half of the countries where dōTERRA does business are actually in developing countries, and many of the growers had been taken advantage of. They were living in not the best circumstances, and we recognized that the most important way for us to contribute back to the world was to benefit directly our growers and our producers of essential oils around the world.
Can I just share one more thought?
Absolutely.
As I'm listening to Greg talk about co-impact sourcing and how strategic that was for us as a company, there's another element to that. And I think it's something that drives in each one of us maybe on a more personal level, and that is that when you think about those things coming together, it really is a good demonstration of the culture of dōTERRA, who we are at our very core, that it's not just about the end goal in mind, it's the process that we get there and the good that we bring about in the process. And that's what we see everybody doing in dōTERRA as a whole. One of the things that's been really important to us in dōTERRA, especially as we've expanded the essential oils beyond just this personal use, and everyone knows that we have this big foray into the sciences and all that we're doing that way for research, that demands that we have consistency. And the only way to do that is to fine-tune our processes. And so all of that combined has helped us to do not just what Greg mentioned, but to do it exceptionally well. And the quality that we see, the consistency that we see within that, which purity is a main element and component, really drives us to where we are today.
So I have a question for you, Doc. What percentage of essential oils on the market today, what percentage are actually pure? Do we know that?
I think it's kind of hard to tell, but I could give you my best educated guess. One of the things that we've done consistently in dōTERRA, and we're all very familiar with this, we know our competition. We know the marketplace. I think in a large sense we've redeveloped the marketplace to our standard, and that's why we're able to do what we do. But I don't think it's an exaggeration, in all honesty, to say that nearly all essential oils, now exact percentage, what is that, 95, 98%? And I don't know, I'll be really bold, why I think that percentage is so high. And I've said this before, I think we've all said it in one way or another, people don't do what we do.
It's certainly not the least expensive way to do things.
Well, Corey's chuckling. I think he would agree with that statement.
There's a lot cheaper ways to do things than the way dōTERRA does them. In terms of our investment in the growers and working with them every step of the way we go through the distillation process, the way that we are primary and right there, the team that we have that flies around the world.
Our quality labs.
Our quality labs, when you add all of that up, no one compares. There's no one, and it's not inexpensive to be able to do it this way. We're committed to it, so we're built around it. We find ways to have efficiencies in other areas, right? So that we can stay focused on bringing these oils, but it's not cheap.
You know, we hear that, you know, obviously we're in the essential oil business, but I hear sometimes that people will say that we're also in the empowerment business.
Absolutely.
Emily, would you like to talk to that thought a little bit?
Yeah, most definitely. We, just to kind of go off of what Dr. Hill and Dave were talking about, we love what we do with Co-Impact sourcing, but we also love what that means on the other side of the bottle. So as we talk about empowerment, right, as a mother, I love having these tools available to take care of my family the way I see fit, and we want every single person on the planet to have that same empowerment. And I love what that does. I also love our business model. As much as I love the essential oils, I equally love our business model because we're able to give financial empowerment in that regard as well, and really have people find a voice and realize that they have something so profound to offer the world. And I love the empowerment that we get on the Co-Impact sourcing side of things, the healing hand side of things. We could go on forever, and really the way that we are empowering on both sides of the bottle.
I know we also provide opportunities to go to the areas in which we source the Co-Impact trips, whether it be Kenya, Guatemala, I'm going to miss a few, Bulgaria, Nepal, it goes on and on. I had the privilege to go to one, and really, it really created that connection and love, not only for dōTERRA and the good that we're doing, but also for the product. And Rob, I know that you have traveled extensively on many of these such trips, and we had a question from Gretchen Ulanowski, who asks, what has been your favorite dōTERRA sourcing trip, and why sourcing in general?
That's as hard as asking me which oil I like the best, but all those trips have been special trips for us. And you say, what maybe our question is, what has been most memorable for me at my age? That's the one that's been most recent. But I think we've been in maybe Guatemala the longest when it comes to kind of these co-impact sourcing trips. But that's amazing because we've been there long enough now that, like, the first time we went there, the little kids in the little village, remember, now when we go back, we see them grown, and we recognize them, and they recognize us.
And you've kept expanding the facility there as well, right?
Anyway, it's very gratifying to see these young children grow up and how they're being changed and how they're continuing to become empowered with what we're doing there.
It always just amazes me how dōTERRA is in the right place at the right time. The very first trip that anyone from dōTERRA made to Nepal, and we were there right after the earthquake. Mm-hmm. And I know what we're doing right now in Somalia is completely off the hook in terms of
a project, a story worthy of a documentary.
Absolutely.
Frankly. And that'll be forthcoming. But you bring back memories. I remember being in Nepal the first time with Emily, and shortly after that earthquake, and I remember the first time in Haiti, similar after that, shortly after their devastating earthquake, the first time that we were there. And again, you just watch the people, and they're a little in shock still. And, you know, it's amazing and so gratifying that dōTERRA has this opportunity to come in at a grassroots level and try to make a difference and try to relieve some of this suffering and provide some means, economic means.
And Dave, I remember you saying last year that we don't just buy farms, we build farmers. And Corey, I know you're over our global operation, and we actually had a question from Kimberly Van Sessen from Westville, Indiana, who asks, how do we choose the oils that we source?
Well, Kimberly, that's a great question. It's a collaborative process. It's not just the operations team, but it's a collaborative process between Dr. Hill's science team, Emily, and marketing team, Dave, and his experience, and everyone. The whole team comes together. We have a multitude of oil possibilities, but from a sourcing side, I will just say that we only will source oils where we can know that they're sustainable and that we're helping people, and that we can supply them in a way that is ethical.
Well, I like to call it the dōTERRA difference. And I feel part of that difference is the impact that we're making on the ground. Mark, could you talk to a little bit to the human impact that you're seeing and how that kind of impacts your life?
Well, you know, when we started this, and we, as Greg says, we didn't have very much at the beginning, but it was always our goal, our dream that someday we could make an impact, not only in the United States where we started, but all around the world. And as, again, we started to source, it gave us a profoundly unique perspective on what we have and perhaps the responsibility, the opportunity for sure that we have to share a little bit with others and help them enjoy some of the things that we take for granted.
Yeah, well, thank you. We did have lots of questions on the future of dōTERRA, our vision for dōTERRA looking out. We had a question from Heather Rodriguez from Sparks, Nevada, who asks, where do you see dōTERRA in 10 years? And what are you most excited about for the future of the company? Maybe we'll start with Greg and move around.
So for the next 10 years, as more and more people continue to look for natural solutions at prices that they can afford, from a source that they trust, that relevancy of dōTERRA, given our current environment and the sort of changing world that is going to be with us for the foreseeable future, makes dōTERRA perfectly positioned. And I have never been more optimistic or more excited about our future than I am now.
Well, I'm going to try to answer that question by going back to the past a little bit, Andrew. And in fact, I'm going to set Dave up here a little bit. So Dave, I don't know if you remember this conversation, but I do, and it had a huge impact on me. You said something like, first of all, Mark, I see us eventually being a multi-billion-dollar company. And I thought, okay, what have I got myself into here with, who is this guy? Because at the time, I think we were doing $150,000, maybe $200,000 a month in volume. And then you said, and I see us marketing our products in countries all over the world. And you talked about the expansive product line, that essential oils could be the foundation for everything that we do. And again, a very narrow-minded, ignorant attorney at that point, I was thinking, well, essential oils, that's kind of it. We've got 40 oils, that's good, right? You talked about having millions of wellness, we called them IPCs at the time, remember, independent product consultants. Talked about having millions of wellness advocates around the world, and I think we just had a handful, couple thousand. So, I don't think I'm as amazed today to see that as I was trying to fathom that at the time, but I'm interested, Dave. I'm going to turn this over to you. So that's what you saw in that first 10 years or so. What do you think in the next 10 years we're going to see?
Well, first of all, I hate to say I don't remember the conversation.
You're going to say I told you so?
But, no, I don't even remember the conversation. But for me, first of all, it's all about foundations. And dōTERRA started out the right way. Looking towards the future, all of that we've been talking about here today, this foundation of sacrifice, this foundation of purity, this foundation that went from there to this incredible social responsibility with our co-impact sourcing and so forth. All of these pieces that have come over time have set us up for the future, and I think the future looks pretty bright for dōTERRA.
So I think about where the world is today. I don't think there's been a time that people have felt so alone and so isolated. And these are scary, uncertain, unprecedented times that we're living through right now. It's not by accident that we named this event the Global Connection. And when I look at these essential oils, they are so powerful in really uniting us and connecting us as human beings. When I look at what does the future hold in the next 10 years, I see dōTERRA as a vehicle that will really connect humanity and really bring us together for a very common cause, for a very specific purpose. Many people will say to me, well, dōTERRA has arrived. You know, you're already such a large company, I don't even matter. And I want every single person to know that they absolutely matter. And the connection that they make with another human being may change their life forever. That they may be the exact person with the exact message that they need that will give them hope. You know, there's a proverb that says, if you have help, you have hope. And if you have hope, you have everything. And we're dealers of hope.
Something that's always playing in my mind is that, yeah, we are living in some unprecedented times. But I'd like to put a little bit different connotation on that. Unprecedented in the sense that we now know more than what we've ever known before. But I also am really enthused for the future because although we've been involved in science and things for a long period of time, we're about discovery in dōTERRA. Mm-hmm. And we're making new discovery all the time. We've done a number of things, some of which you'll have heard about or will hear about as we go through this event and certainly other events in the future. But we're making discovery, and it's impactful in how we accomplish and do what we do best at dōTERRA. I feel like in these times that we're in, there is an undue amount of criticism that falls not just upon us, but maybe upon dōTERRA as a whole, and maybe even on the essential oil industry. Know that we're separating ourselves from that. We always have been, and we're going to continue to do those things. And so I'm really very optimistic about the future, but I'm excited about these discoveries and how they'll impact us more substantially than what they have in the past.
My thoughts are a little bit along the lines of what Emily said. You know, when we started this company, remember, we started this company during a economic recession, right? And dōTERRA was the tool for many people when it came to some of the challenges that they were facing during that economic recession. But I kind of feel we're kind of suffering from a little bit of a kindness or a humanity recession right now. And I think people are needing kind of that human connection and that human touch again. And I think while dōTERRA is not the only way we'll connect with each other, I think we are uniquely positioned to be the answer for many people to find that kindness and that connection again with people. Essential oils are wonderful, right? You open a wild orange essential oil and let someone smell it, and if they don't respond to that, they've got other issues. But it's just, they have been a vehicle and will continue to be a vehicle to help people connect with each other and show kindness and service to other human beings. I think we need more of that in the world today. So,
I'm a data-driven guy, and as I look at dōTERRA, it's a given that we're going to be 2, 3, 4 times larger than we are today. All the metrics in terms of enrollments and retention and everything that we have going on indicate that we're going to be much, much larger as a company. So that's the future. We'll be bigger. But what I'm most excited about relative to dōTERRA is the last 12 years have been spent building a foundation that is ready to absorb whatever the world's going to throw at us. We've been able to adapt to things because we're primary on source in Haiti or in Nepal. When a natural disaster happens, we can bring relief in hours and days. In Guatemala, I remember when there was a volcano eruption, we had responses immediately, right? And not only are we going to be much bigger, we're going to be solid, and we're going to make a difference every step of the way. It excites me to think about in 10 years from now being out with growers in other parts of the world and not only impacting 500,000 or 1 million lives or 1.5 million lives, but impacting 10 million lives and 15 million lives. And really having dōTERRA make a huge difference in the world. We've made a difference in parts of the world today, and we're proud of that, and we're excited about that. But to be a player on the world stage over the next 5 or 10 years is what I believe the future holds for dōTERRA.
It really is amazing to see the impact that dōTERRA has had these past 12 years, and yet somehow it feels as though we're just getting started. Let's continue the conversation about our pursuit of purity, and we hope from wherever you're joining us from around the world that you can feel a little more connected to us and, of course, the broader dōTERRA community. And thank you so much to all of our founding executives.
Now, an important factor in our pursuit of pure products is actually being on the ground where we source our oils. This is critical when it comes to long-term sustainability and quality. Having the chance to go to Guatemala myself, I've seen firsthand how these direct partnerships with our cardamom farmers, growers, and distillers are life-changing for everyone involved in this beautiful supply chain. Nobody knows this better than our direct sourcing team.
Historically, essential oils have been brought to the market through brokers. Companies have reached out to a broker and said, I need this oil. The broker works all of his channels to find whatever oils he can and then sells them to the company and sells them as pure oils. And so the company will then sell those oils to the consumer, oftentimes thinking that they're pure oils. But when they've gone through a broker, you never quite know what's happened. One of the real challenges in the world of essential oil has been connecting the end customer with the farmer. Okay, there's the middlemen that create challenges, and with dōTERRA, we're the only one in between, right? We work directly with the farmers, then it's dōTERRA, and then it's the consumer. When you have other people in between, you know, the farmer may get taken advantage of.
A small-scale farmer that is producing an essential oil crop in a country typically doesn't have any kind of contract commitment for what they're producing. They also are relying usually on very limited information and market information. A tremendous amount of risk of not knowing who's going to buy your crop, but then also having to invest your own resources, and in many cases being paid often weeks, months, or even years after they have delivered the crops that they've produced. We're trying to reverse these limiting factors for small-scale farmers, which we do so by providing prepayments where those are empowering for the farmers, providing long-term guaranteed purchase commitments to our distillers that they then can provide onward to the cooperatives with whom they're working with.
As we look at sourcing oils, right, we want to be at the source. One of the ways we could do that is to just purchase a large farm. And we could purchase a large farm, hire 3 or 4 people, and we could manage the farm and produce pure oils, right? But if we do that, we're not blessing people's lives. We're not helping people. It's these artisan farmers, these people for generations have had family farms, and we don't want to put any of these people out of business. They know how to do it. They know how to do it in a way that produces the best oils. They cultivate the plants. They care for the plants. And when it comes out of a commercial farm, it just doesn't have the same impact. And certainly we're not blessing as many lives.
We do this through working globally, having a sourcing team that is working very hard and present, and even most cases living within the region where they are overseeing sourcing, and establishing relationships with these distillers that we have spent many years meeting, learning, and partnering with.
One of the keys with going direct to source is to know who we're working with and making sure that the grower is receiving the money that we're paying for the oil. We buy an oil, and if we buy it from a broker, then you don't know where the money is eventually going, or if the end farmer's getting it. That's why we don't deal with brokers. In Guatemala years ago, when we were beginning to source cardamom, I was talking to growers of cardamom, and I was talking to them, and I said, we want to work with you. And they said, well, what about the coyotes? And the coyotes are people who would come around, and they were just brokers who were buying oil and taking advantage of the farmers. And I said, our goal is to eliminate coyotes. And they said, I remember one of the growers said, oh, that's going to be very difficult to do. And I said, well, at dōTERRA, we like to do hard things. So we're going to eliminate the coyotes, and we're going to work directly with those who harvest the cardamom. And that's exactly what we've done over the past 6 years.
I think we've all heard the saying, if you want something done right, then do it yourself. Being on the ground with our farmers, it's not that we're actually doing it ourselves, but we have the ability to influence what most companies can't or won't, or quite frankincensedly don't. Now, all jokes aside, it's the job of our sourcing team to make certain we have these beautiful partnerships and long-term sustainable sourcing. Pretty easy, right? It's not, but Tim Valentiner and his team lead this incredible crusade to ensure we have the best of the best provided by the thousands of partner farmers from Bulgaria to Madagascar and all the way back around.
Direct sourcing and forming long-term partnerships are central to dōTERRA's sourcing strategy. We're excited to introduce you today to some of the people who are making this happen around the world. From Bulgaria, Plamen Nikolov, our General Manager of Esotery Bulgaria. From Kenya, Taylor McKay, Strategic Sourcing Manager for Sub-Saharan Africa. From Australia, Emily Bell, Strategic Sourcing Manager for the Oceania and Asia regions. And from Southern Italy, Cecilia Spinelli, a long-term citrus partner with us. Today we want to talk about why we intentionally direct source our essential oil and how this sourcing strategy is critically important in our pursuit of purity and all that goes into making that happen. Plamen, can you first talk to us a bit about how adulteration typically happens in the essential oil industry in Bulgaria and how we are doing it very differently in terms of how we are sourcing and working directly with farmers through esotery?
Yes, we all know that adulteration happens And actually I can divide the time here in Bulgaria as the time before esetere and the time after esetere. This is a very simple line. Before esetere, I know that dōTERRA was looking for partners or distillers who are eventually on the same level of understanding the essential oils, and partners dōTERRA can rely on, and that was not possible. I can talk about melissa and rose oil as example of frequently adulteration, and the reason is very simple. These are expensive oils, and every distiller and farmer actually is tempted to adulterate these oils. But and finally, as dōTERRA learned that it is impossible to find a reliable partner, dōTERRA decided to establish esetere. That was the direct reason of it. And esetere is an instrument to change the industry and the standards in the industry in Bulgaria.
To actually create a new standard, right?
A new standard, yes.
We really had a difficult time finding partners that aligned with our priorities of purity, of ensuring that we're getting the best quality, but really the focus on farmers and ensuring that they were the central part of everything we were doing, that it was a farmer-focused operation first and foremost. And without really having any partners that shared that vision, we realized we had to do it ourselves, but to set a new standard that has now really raised the bar for everyone else that's functioning in Bulgaria now currently.
Exactly, and it was the logical step by establishing own company, 100% owned company in Bulgaria, and the life of esetere after that is very clear and very logical. We started to establish long-term relations to farmers. The oils we distill at esetere are lavender, melissa, yarrow, and we partner with important rose distilleries. In the meantime, while the construction of our own rose distillery is still running, and we are expecting to be ready for the 2021 season of campaign of the rose.
Yeah, we are all very excited for Terra Rosa to be completed and to be able to have the crowning jewel of essential oils from Bulgaria be the rose oil and being distilled ourselves through esetere. It's going to be very exciting next year.
Absolutely.
Thank you so much, Plamen. It's truly been a transformative effort in how these oils are sourced in Bulgaria. And Plamen, esetere is the amazing place that it is today because of your incredible leadership and the amazing esetere team who work tirelessly to prioritize purity, but also farmers first. The journey for how esetere was born and what it is accomplishing today is honestly a story worth a lengthy book. It's amazing to think back where we were just 5 years ago, and we hope that all of you have the opportunity at some point to visit esetere on a Co-Impact sourcing trip or an incentive trip to see all of this happening firsthand. So thank you again, Plamen.
Welcome.
Now we've been hearing this morning how rampant adulteration is in the essential oil industry. And Emily, I want to switch to you for a little bit on this topic. You've been involved in the essential oil industry for some years now, including working prior to dōTERRA with a distiller that supplies us with a beautiful essential oil, but also focuses on very large fragrance industry clients. Tell us a little bit about your past work and what root causes you've seen that lead to adulteration and how prevalent it is currently.
Yeah, sure. Thank you, Tim. Indeed, I previously worked for one of dōTERRA's partner distiller here in Australia before I joined dōTERRA and the sourcing team. So I can say that I witnessed firsthand, how serious dōTERRA is about sourcing pure and natural oils. And having to do that, meaning working directly with partners on the ground, because the fact is that to avoid any risk, you can't be buying any oils from brokers, because you might face, potentially be supplied with adulterated oils that, they would have done that for their own benefit. So yeah, working directly on the ground with the partners is definitely key. So when I worked there, I did deal with a lot of large fragrance companies as well. And even though both aromatherapy and fragrance companies tend to aim to source sustainable products, I also saw that the fragrance industry is much more focused on the aroma of the oil rather than compared to purity or the chemical composition. And so it was a bit like the aroma always had to be very standardized. So if there was a slight difference between, from one batch to the other, that could be an issue for the end product. So I'm not going to say that fragrance companies actually promote, adulteration of oils, but it is a fact that they use a lot of biotech alternatives or ingredients or synthetic molecule isolates, all these kind of things, which really, give that standard aroma. So for the fragrance companies, sourcing pure and natural oils like we do in aromatherapy is not the most important things, I believe.
The reality is that we are very different, and because we're working with natural products from nature, this means that natural variation should be expected. And so a lavender bottle now from this past harvest season should have a slight aroma difference from the lavender that's harvested next season or the following season. And quite frankly, if you buy an essential oil and it smells and looks and tastes and feels the same for the next 10 years, you should be worried, because it means that it's likely not pure and natural, because natural variation is part of the chemistry and part of what nature produces. Thanks so much, Emily, for your insights and background from what you did prior to dōTERRA, and obviously love everything you're doing with us and for us as our lead in the Oceania and Asia regions, and all the beautiful oils that are coming from those areas, and most importantly, the partnerships that you're fostering and continuing to develop there. Essential oils are part of a very complex and nuanced industry indeed, with many end users, such as flavor and fragrance companies, but also aromatherapy. So it is fascinating to understand that as these different industries prioritize different objectives, they have varying levels of tolerance for adulteration and standardization, which can lead to oils being mislabeled, being impure, and as a result, at times, less potent. But of course, we of course have very specific objectives of purity and potency, and as a result, we've established a global botanical network of partner distillers and even our own distilleries like Esoterra, when needed, to ensure we can always get what we need, which are pure and potent oils. Cecilia and her family run a multi-generational citrus oil operation in the very southern part of the country, and one of the oils that they produce and have done for many, many years is bergamot. Bergamot is, of course, an amazing oil used primarily for aromatherapy, but unfortunately is one of the most commonly adulterated essential oils. Cecilia, can you tell us a little bit about bergamot oil from Italy and why adulteration, unfortunately, is so common with this oil?
Our family company works with a vast network of citrus farmers in Italy to provide to dōTERRA so special and so fabulous citrus essential oils, including lemon, bergamot, orange, mandarin, and other citrus oils. In the case of bergamot, one of the main chemical components sought from bergamot is called linalool. Unfortunately, linalool is so easy to isolate and produce synthetically, which means that many companies adulterate bergamot essential oil by adding linalool to spike it or to extend it. instead of supplying pure essential bergamot oil. It's actually very sad how much bergamot oil is adulterated. For example, in Italy, there is an estimated 300 metric tons of pure bergamot oil produced annually, yet 1,000 metric tons of bergamot oil get sold on the global market. Those numbers don't line up very well, of course. And this means that there is a lot of pure bergamot oil that is extended or adulterated and then sold to whoever is willing to buy it, whether they know that it is adulterated or not.
This means that basically 700 metric tons of bergamot oil being sold on the market is not actually pure. If the estimates are around 300 tons per year and 1,000 are being sold, that's coming from somewhere. And it's so sad to see that level of adulteration happening for an oil that's so precious and important as bergamot. It's disturbing for transparency reasons, but also safety. Can you tell us a little bit about how this affects the bergamot market, this type of practice of adulteration?
This is a big problem because it crowds out honest distillers like us. We don't cheat or cut corners. This means that we need to purchase a massive volume of bergamot fruit to produce pure essential oil. And this is difficult when the prices are set so high artificially.
It's so important for us to understand how oil adulteration ultimately cheats not only the consumers, but it hurts the farmers who are so dependent on what they produce for their livelihood, and how we need to continue to educate the world about this. Now for our last questions, Taylor, you are based currently in Kenya and oversee our clove bud oil that is coming from Madagascar, where unfortunately as well essential oil adulteration practices are widespread. Can you talk to us a little bit about that in the Madagascan context, but also about clove in particular?
Yeah, thanks, Tim. So clove is unique in the fact that the clove tree has 3 distinct plant parts that have different chemical profiles. So you have clove bud, clove stem, and clove leaf. And oftentimes these are distilled together or blended together afterwards, despite their chemistries being quite different. And then they're sold as a package deal as a pure clove bud essential oil. In a minute, I think we'll be learning a bit more about this in a new video that describes just how complicated the clove industry is, particularly in Madagascar. But what I think is important here is to focus on dōTERRA's approach to direct sourcing of clove bud through our trusted partners and distillers. This approach, as Ben alluded to earlier and many of the panelists have spoken about, really helps us ensure that we are indeed receiving 100% pure clove bud oil versus something else. Because like I mentioned, what is normally traded and sold, or often traded and sold as pure bud oil, is almost always an adulterated version of clove stem or even clove leaf oil that's mixed and blended together. In fact, I think after all the work that we and our partners have been doing on the ground in Madagascar for the past several years, we're pretty convinced that we're likely the only company in the world that's actually able to say with confidence that our clove bud oil is actually truly clove bud oil and not something else.
It's also encouraging to know that we can have confidence in the purity of dōTERRA's clove bud oil and the good we are doing for the farmers by prioritizing pure oil and paying even a premium for it. Can you tell us a little bit more about that?
Yeah, so one of the challenges that exists in the market is that most testing labs usually don't have the capability to really distinguish clove bud, pure bud, from adulterated oil, particularly when it's coming from even the same tree but just different plant parts. but we're pioneering the way for customers to feel confident in the purity of the oils that they're receiving. We're not only ensuring this purity through direct sourcing with farmers and distillers by being right at the ground and at the source, but also, of course, through our state-of-the-art third-party labs who provide testing for adulteration, and then, of course, our own internal quality control procedures to ensure CPTG standards are kept.
Thanks, Taylor. Again, all these practices help us to source the best and help the most. The results of this hard work coming together to ensure that we truly have the potency of pure clove bud oil, when very likely no other company can say and verify the same. And this has indeed been an amazing journey as we've tried to understand so much about clove bud. I want to say thank you so much to each of our panelists for being with us. And as Taylor mentioned, please stay tuned for the premiere of our first episode of the new series, The Pursuit, which takes a deeper dive into what we've been talking about here today in terms of Madagascar and clove bud, but also why direct sourcing is absolutely important to everything we're doing with our sourcing strategy.
Tim's team will be back tomorrow to share more about the impact we're making globally. But there's a reason we travel the world in pursuit of the purest essential oils. You've seen the other oils. They've been changed, cheapened, synthesized. They've been adulterated.
There are 18 tribes scattered across our island. We all call ourselves Malagasy, but our customs and way of life vary from place to place. Here in Mananzari, we are members of the Atambaoka tribe, the smallest tribe in Madagascar.
The ocean is our lifeblood here in Mananzari. We rely on the water for everything, from fishing and hunting to plant cultivation. We are surrounded on one side by salt water and fresh water on the other. Some of our largest exports are coffee, vanilla, and a variety of essential oil crops like vetiver, cinnamon, and clove. There are 2 large exporters here, and countless farmers running their own small distilleries. In this area alone, there are more than 80 small-scale distilleries.
Myself, man.
My name is Joseph Clarice. I've been a farmer here in Mananzari for 7 years now. My wife Rosine and I moved here after getting married, and we began farming coffee and rice.
We have a simple life here on the outskirts of Mananzari. Each morning, Claudius feeds the chickens and prepares our tools while I fetch water and cook breakfast. We live in a small community of close family, where we all take care of each other. We have a young son named Claudio. He's 7 years old. He always says that he wants to be a doctor when he grows up.
Claudio's education is very important to us. Up until a few years ago, we were still only planting coffee and rice, but that wasn't enough. We started planting clove trees, which provided an additional income we could use to send Claudio to school.
There are no doctors this far away from the city. If someone needs to visit the doctor, it can be difficult to find transportation. We hope that by sending Claudio to school, he will someday have the opportunity to open a clinic in our area. Planting clove isn't enough to make us rich, but it does get Claudio his education and also allows us to save for the future.
Many farmers live far outside of the city, and it's hard for them to transport their product to the market where they can be sold. Because of this, we've seen traders begin to appear in Mananzari, men who travel from farmer to farmer buying out their stock and taking it to the market.
Middlemen are the biggest challenge. A trader might go to a farmer and buy out his stock of clove, and then sell it in the city market for double the buying price. If the farmer doesn't sell, he risks his supply spoiling, so he is forced to make a deal.
Using some basic chemistry, a trader can pad their profits even further.
For a trader, it can be immensely profitable to adulterate an essential oil. When it comes to clove, for example, there are 3 parts of the plant from which oil is acquired: the stem, the leaf, and the bud. All 3 oils contain the same chemical compounds, but the amounts of each compound vary from one oil to another. The most desirable chemical compound in clove is eugenyl acetate. Its levels are highest in the clove bud. Essential oil derived from the bud is naturally the most valuable, being worth double the clove stem and quadruple the clove leaf. To some buyers, high-quality oil isn't a priority. In that kind of scenario, they may seek out a cheaper clove oil. The real problem comes when a customer asks for one thing and is given another.
There's little access to chemical testing equipment in Madagascar, so international buyers often don't know if their essential oils are pure until they're personally tested.
The highest quality clove oil is around 15% eugenyl acetate. There are many ways to mix oils to increase profits. Some methods are as simple as mixing clove bud with clove stem. We can keep eugenyl acetate levels within the buyer's expectations and they'd never know. Another method is to add synthetic eugenyl acetate directly to clove leaf or stem. To even a sophisticated lab, it would look like clove bud oil. The difference between pure and synthetic is almost undetectable.
Naturally, most sellers claim their oils are pure, and it would be difficult to prove them wrong. To give our buyers confidence in the oil we produce, we ship our essential oils to one of the only labs on the island, in Antananarivo, our nation's capital. The tests we run in this lab are not comprehensive, but it gives our buyers some base levels to go off of.
When essential oils arrive here at dōTERRA, we do a series of tests to confirm the purity of the oils. At the Quality Control Lab, we use an extensive protocol to ensure the purity. One of the most common tools in the industry is the GCMS, which is used to identify each individual chemical compound present in the oils. It shows the natural composition of the oil, and we also use it to check for adulteration and contamination with chemicals that are not naturally present in the oils. GCMS by itself is not enough to ensure purity. This is where at dōTERRA we have additional testing that looks at organoleptic and physical properties of the oils. The last thing we do is to make sure the oils are free of contaminants, such as heavy metals, pesticides, and microorganisms. Because our sourcing team works closely with our suppliers and quality is ensured at the source, we rarely see adulteration.
All around the world, farmers are dependent on oil producers for their livelihood. Gladys and Rosine represent hundreds of thousands of farmers who work hard to provide an education and future opportunities for their children. These farmers are the heart of the essential oil industry.
Welcome, everybody. It's important to understand why quality and purity are so vital and worth striving for. As we hear over and over, quality matters, and it starts long before seeds are planted. Knowing this, it's imperative for dōTERRA to be as close to the source as possible. Of equal importance to dōTERRA is our scientific and medical communities. It's an honor to be hosting a discussion about quality and why quality matters with esteemed experts in the field today. Thank you so much for joining us, and let's go ahead and do a few introductions. Mark, joining us from Austin, Texas, thank you so much. Would you like to introduce yourself?
Well, hi, thank you for including me. My name is Mark Blumenthal. I'm the founder and executive director of the American Botanical Council. We're an independent nonprofit research and education organization made up of scientists, health professionals, and herb experts from around the world. And we focus on research and education on herbs, medicinal plants, botanical extracts, essential oils, medicinal fungi and mushrooms, etc. So we are a science organization.
Thank you so much. And we're excited to have you here on the panel today. Dr. Satyal.
Hello, everyone. I'm Prabodh Satyal, Chief Scientific Officer for Aromatic Plant Research Center, APRC. I received my doctorate master's degree on essential oil research in University of Alabama, Huntsville. I've been doing essential oil research it's closer to more than 10 years.
And what has your research been focused on primarily?
Most of the research are focused on adulteration,
okay,
discovery of synthetic marker, and chirality-based adulteration detection.
Okay.
And those are the things that helps to, decipher adulteration in those time, so.
Fantastic. Thank you for joining us.
Thanks for having me here.
Thank you. Dr. Osguthorpe.
Great to be here, Andrew. My name is Russ Osguthorpe. I am the Chief Medical Officer at dōTERRA and by training a pediatric infectious diseases specialist.
Great. Well, thank you for joining us. We just watched the first episode of the new series, The Pursuit, which will document the great lengths our sourcing team goes to sustainably source the purest essential oils on the planet. This episode, of course, was about clove, which, as we've seen, is frequently and unfortunately adulterated. Dr. Osguthorpe, reflect a little bit on the video.
I agree. It's very important to us here at dōTERRA. The story is a fantastic example of how adulteration finds its way, without being very careful, can find its way into our homes.
Yeah, like Dr. Osguthorpe said, clove bud is one of the most adulterated essential oil. And last year I did market survey of several retail supplier. I found more than 90% were adulterated.
Getting rid of adulteration in supply chains across the world, not just for dōTERRA, but for everybody, is important work.
And speaking of adulteration, Mark, I read with interest your organization's recent bulletin published in early July with regards to the adulteration of English lavender, Lavandula angustifolia, which is, of course, the lavender that dōTERRA loves. And can you elaborate on this study, its findings, for us a little bit, please?
Yes, thank you. It's part of our program which is going into its 10th year of operation soon, called the Botanical Adulterants Prevention Program, which is an international consortium of organizations that we lead, dealing with research and education on adulteration and fraud in the global marketplace for herbs, herbal extracts, essential oils, etc. We've previously published a bulletin on the adulteration of tea tree oil, a lab guidance document on tea tree oil, and then in July of this year, we just published the bulletin on lavender. The Lavender Bulletin has been extensively peer-reviewed by 25 experts in the area of chemistry, of medicinal plants and essential oils, people in academia, government, and industry in the United States and around the world. So it is a highly credible document. It has over 101 references to it, and it's basically a scientific bulletin, or almost like a technical white paper, that is very extensive, showing the types of adulteration of English lavender, the chemistry, what the evidence for the adulteration is, with many references based on the chemistry and previous reports that have been published in book chapters and in scientific journals about adulteration of lavender. So if anybody ever doubted whether lavender, English lavender, was ever adulterated, we have definitively confirmed that it is being adulterated, which is really no surprise to many of us. But some people suggest that over 50%, maybe 70 or more percent of the world's stock of so-called lavender is actually adulterated in one way or another.
Yeah. Thoughts on that, Dr. Osguthorpe?
Well, I mean, yes, I have so many thoughts on that.
Yeah.
It drives me crazy that lavender, which is used by hundreds of millions of people every day, across the world in a plethora of products. They just don't know what they're using.
Yeah.
We have done with both APRC as well as dōTERRA partnerships with NCNPR at the University of Mississippi, similar studies on adulteration, and have found that up to 2/3 of the lavenders currently on the market, marketed as essential oils, not just products containing lavender, but the essential oils on the market, 2/3 of them are highly adulterated and of poor quality. It is important to know what it is that you're using. dōTERRA goes to exceptional lengths to make it clear to everyone what you're using. We publish and source to you the GCMS of each lot of lavender that we sell you. We get rid of many, many totes, huge batches of lavender that don't meet our quality specifications or that are adulterated. Tim Valentiner and his team go to exceptional lengths of making sure that our supply chains are full of quality lavender rather than adulterated lavender. I can't say this really strongly enough. We as an industry have to clean up ourselves because nobody's watching. So dōTERRA's doing it right.
Yeah.
Very few people in the industry are.
Yeah.
And we should call it out when we see it.
Absolutely.
And so these publications that the American Botanical Council, that APRC, that NCNPR are doing are all playing a role in helping everyone around the world to understand how adulteration affects us.
Yeah. And Mark, how is your, the bulletins that you're putting out, how is it being received?
People tell us in various companies that they have reset and revised specifications for various ingredients, botanical ingredients, based on our adulteration reports, and consequently have often changed their suppliers, presumably to a better supplier, because of the information they've learned from us about adulteration. So we believe we're having a positive impact, which in the long run, at the end of the day, is good for the consumer.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yep, a report like that has to be produced a lot, you know.
Yeah.
Not only lavender, I was asking him to, you know, make more.
Yeah.
Yeah, there are a lot of problems on industry.
I know last year you conducted a market study on lavender. Mark alluded somewhere between 50 and 70% on the market potentially being adulterated. What was sort of the findings for your market study that you conducted?
We did on 50 companies.
Yeah.
Around 78% were adulterated.
I know we are very proud of our partnerships. You alluded to the NCNPR partnership, which is the National Center for Natural Products Research at the University of Mississippi. How's that partnership going, Dr. Osguthorpe?
Oh, phenomenally well. We've had a great year with them. So we're working on similar research to what the American Botanical Council with Mark and what APRC has done with lavender. We're also helping to fund and support research into lavender adulteration. In that research, what they're doing at NCNPR is using dōTERRA's oil as the gold standard for what a quality oil should look like. And this body of work, which will be peer-reviewed and published, will greatly enhance the field and everyone's ability to detect adulteration as well as root it out of the supply chain.
A couple of years ago, there were some scientific reports made with regards to lavender that caused some concern with our customers and the general public. The issue in question was that lavender was causing breast development in young boys. Specifically, the study mentioned that boys were exposed to lavender fragrance containing products such as colognes, shampoos, and soaps. Mark, I know you've studied this issue and that your organization is preparing to release a paper soon on this issue. And would you like to kind of elaborate a little bit on that for us?
Yes, thank you. And let me just say that the paper has not been completed. We're waiting for some more laboratory tests. It has not yet been submitted to a peer-reviewed journal. So we always want to be careful about discussing something before it's been peer-reviewed. So basically what we have is misreporting in the medical literature by well-meaning people who are clinicians or basically reporting what they saw, and they see that the kids were taking or bathing with lavender fragrance materials, which when they took the materials away, some of these symptoms stopped. So there was definitely a certain association that may be causal related to these materials, but they did not contain, in the best of our knowledge, any essential oil of lavender, but may have contained some synthetic lavender type fragrances as well as any other types of materials that you find in cosmetics. So it's difficult to really pinpoint what the putatively offensive material might be, but it's not essential oil of lavender to the best of our knowledge.
Yeah, I agree with you, Mark. I agree that if you're going to implicate a particular ingredient in a long list of ingredients in a product, you should prove that that ingredient is there before you write the article.
Well, thanks, Mark, for all of the great work that you're doing at the American Botanical Council.
Agreed.
And we really appreciate kind of you pioneering these efforts for so many years. Prabodh, quality and purity, why does this matter for the customer?
Because when you go and buy in market, when you are going to buy apple, don't buy the orange, you know.
Yeah.
Because most of the essential oil companies are selling their oils are 100% pure and natural, but they are not.
Yeah.
You know, and you are being cheated by the retailer or seller.
Yeah.
So that's not fair, you know. Like Dr. Osguthorpe thinks adulteration is criminal.
Yeah.
I do also think the same way, you know.
Yeah. Okay, fantastic.
Yeah.
Well, conclude us here today, Dr. Osguthorpe.
I think the reason that it matters, Andrew, is it's a safety issue.
Yeah.
If you don't know what you're putting on or into your bodies, you could potentially be doing harm. Knowing what is in the bottle is the foundation of safety.
Thank you, and thank you all for joining us here today. This has been a fantastic and insightful discussion, and what separates dōTERRA in this industry is our pursuit and commitment to purity. We hold ourselves, our supply lines, and our products to the highest standards. And every oil in every batch is 100% pure, guaranteed by our rigorous testing process. And of course, as we've seen today, the fantastic team in the field there being as close to the source as possible. And now we're going to take you into the lab to help you understand the meticulous and painstaking efforts, as Dr. Osguthorpe laid out, that dōTERRA goes to in order to bring you pure and efficacious products.
All right, guys, so we're here at the dōTERRA lab, and this is where we test all of our oils to make sure that the chemistry is optimal and there are no contaminants. Now, we run this several different times along the manufacturing process, just to be sure. You can never be too sure. But that, my friends, is the Certified Pure Therapeutic Grade Difference, also known as CPTG. Now, speaking of C, I see Cecile here, and she's somebody who understands this a lot more than me. We're grateful to have you, Cecile. Ça va bien?
Très bien, et toi? How are you?
I'm very good. But talk to us, my friend. What do you have for us today?
Today I would like to show you the labs. We have 3 different labs, and I'd like to start with the chemistry lab. It's where we test for the natural composition of the oils and also potential contamination. Would you like to go and see it?
I'd love to. Let's go.
Let's go.
Dakota.
Hey.
How's it going?
Fantastic.
All right, so Cecile told me that you would take care of us as far as understanding physical testing and what that means.
Totally.
Can you enlighten us?
Definitely. So every oil that comes through the chemistry lab first has to undergo a series of physical tests. So we'll look at things like appearance, color, aroma, very basic physical properties to make sure that the essential oil is pure. After these tests, we will take them through a series of instruments that will give us a next level of understanding, again to evaluate their purity so that we can catch anything before it goes on to the next step.
And the next step is GCMS.
Exactly.
So all of this is happening way before GCMS.
It is.
I gotta check this out. All right, guys, so we just got done with physical testing. Now we're on to the next phase, which is GCMS. We have Beatrice here. She's our expertise. Really simply, what is GCMS?
GCMS is a test that we do that tells us the content of the oil specifically. What it does is we will put the oil into the GCMS and it runs through this column that is really long and really, really thin. And it helps us separate the oil into individual compounds that will show us, as it detects it here in a mass spec, what it looks like. And all these peaks will tell us what it is as we compare them to a standard library that we have of known spectra. And then we'll have a report that will come out called the chromatograph.
Okay, so we basically break down each oil into its individual components, and then we're able to compare that to a validated database where we understand the exact benchmark we're looking for.
Exactly.
Here's a question for you. What if we know or we see that an oil doesn't meet that benchmark?
If that happens, then we'll have an investigation open, and then our quality assurance department will start to review the whole process. But we also have a lot of different tests that we do that would help us solidify, and we can go check that out actually.
Let's go.
So right here we have the ICP-MS. And the GCMS is nice, it gives us what we want to know in an oil, whereas the ICP-MS shows us what we don't want in an oil, like harmful substances like lead or mercury, things like that. So our sample will get dissolved in very concentrated acid. It dissolves it, and so it's easy for us to run through the plasma beam, and it will then separate and get detected on the detector. And then we will see the concentration of each of these elements.
Okay, so what I understand is GCMS alone is not enough. So by implementing this technology, we're able to ensure quality and safety even more.
Exactly.
All right. Well, thank you for your time. I've learned a lot. But I'm gonna go find Cecile because I think there's still a lot more we need to get into. Thank you. All right.
Hi, Simone. How was it?
It was good. I'm not gonna lie, there were a lot of details, but I pretty much got it all down.
Awesome. I'd like to show you more. We have the EM lab here. EM is for environmental monitoring. We test the water, we test the air, and also the surfaces, just to make sure everything is clean in the manufacturing process.
Robert, how's it going, my man?
Right, how are you?
Good, I'm good. So I was just with Cecile, and she mentioned that we test water, surface levels, and air samples? I gotta be honest with you, I don't fully understand why we're testing water.
Well, the water doesn't go into our products, but it does touch our equipment surfaces during the cleaning process. So we want to make sure that we're not like getting any contamination into our product, because they are product contact surfaces. So product will come in contact with those surfaces, so we want to make sure that they're clean and good to go.
Makes sense, makes sense. And I imagine that's the same with the surface level test that we run?
Yes, we do a swab sampling technique where the surfaces are swabbed, put into a neutralizing broth, and we will test this broth for the various tests we want to run on it.
Very consistent as well with all these tests.
Correct.
Awesome. Air samples.
Air samples, yes. The air samples we collect using these dual head air samplers, and we just want to make sure that the air in the manufacturing environment is good to go. So it kind of covers all of our bases.
Makes sense to me.
Okay.
So in addition to all the other tests that we do, this is just an additional safeguard that we put into place.
Correct.
We check water, we check surface levels, we check air samples. I'm gonna check you out later, but thank you so much, Robert.
All right.
Appreciate you.
Have a good day.
Okay, so I knew there were a lot of steps to this. I didn't know there were that many steps, but we're going for quality, so I'm all for it.
Yes, well, I have one more stop for you. Here we have the microlab. That's where we test the products at the beginning of the manufacturing and at the end. So we test for potential contamination with bacteria, yeast, and fungi. And Pretty Banana is going to show you around.
Awesome. Merci. Pretty, how's it going? I'm good. So Cecile explained that this is one of the final steps before the product ends up in our hands. So that's a pretty important step. Can you explain to us kind of a breakdown of what happens before we receive the product?
So this is the microbiology lab, and we test for the microbial contamination if it's to happen. So for example, over here you can see Brady is sampling all those samples to test for the microbial contamination. And this is a product, bergamot mint oil, which is going to be tested against bacterial and eastern mold and staph, pseudomonas, E. coli, and salmonella test.
Wow. So that's a lot of testing. I mean, we're running tests way before, right? But this is just another safeguard that we put into place to ensure that there's absolutely no contamination.
Exactly.
Awesome. So I see you have an example.
Yes. So this is to show our viewer that if there's nothing on the plate, that means like no grow, like you cannot see anything, right? But if there is some microbial contamination, and you can see a plate look like this. So this is our positive control, and this is our negative control.
Well, I know you got a lot of work to do, and you look very busy. So I'm gonna leave you to that. Thank you so much for sharing that. Thank you for what you do, and we'll see you later. All right, Cecile, so we understand there's a lot of work to be done. We're gonna end this right here, but thank you so much for the behind the scenes look. That's incredible to see the amount of work and steps that are being put forth just to ensure quality.
Absolutely, you're so welcome. I was very happy to show you. It's true, we have a great team of scientists here. They make sure our oils are pure, are free of contamination.
For sure, for sure. And so I know I speak on behalf of everybody watching from home. Thank you guys for everything that you guys do.
Thank you, Simon. It was
All
a
right.
pleasure.
We'll see you.
I trust dōTERRA oils because before dōTERRA, I was like many people using oils that were at the store.
I didn't really realize that there was no standard in the essential oil industry. I kind of thought, well, if it says it's 100% pure essential oil, then that must be what it is.
The fact that they have a third party test all of their oils and that you can go in and look that up is really reassuring to us to know that what we're putting in our body is exactly what we think it is. And knowing that they do that, like, I'm not worried about using essential oils through dōTERRA.
So I trust the source. CPTG, certified pure therapeutic grade, we are guaranteed pure and potent oils.
When I started doing some digging and doing my research around dōTERRA, I started to realize that their standards, their purity, their transparency around exactly what's in the bottle and who farmed it and all of those details that were really transparent about, and that was really reassuring to me.
I wanted to know what these bottles could do for my son, for my family. And ultimately, it became something that not only I helped my family with, but I've helped other families with.
I'm a believer. I have to believe in something. You don't sell me something. I have to believe in something. And so when I saw her belief in that and how she started to utilize it with her patients, well, then that's when I started to come around myself and start to learn more and more and start to integrate it personally within my practice.
I feel safe, I feel empowered. I just know that what I'm giving my children is wonderful.
Whether you're a weekend warrior or whether you're a professional athlete, these products and oils will actually do wonders for the body. I don't know where I would be without these essential oils and products.
I went to where dōTERRA sources peppermint and Roman chamomile. It was two brothers. One brother was distilling and one was out in the farms And I specifically asked them why they only worked with dōTERRA, and they said because they treat us like family.
I trust that everyone has been treated well along the supply chain. I trust that everyone has been paid fairly. And that for me is extremely important, the way that we source our oils.
And so my heart every day is grateful for dōTERRA, what it's done for our family and my health, and what they're doing also around the world to change lives of the growers, bringing them to us. It's pretty phenomenal.
If there's one thing I want you to take away from this, it's that people are at the heart of everything we do. It's been this way from the very beginning. We source our oils the way we do because it builds communities. We make sure every bottle is pure because you use oils and your loved ones use them. It may not be the easy way, but it's the right way. But we're just getting started. There's so much more to look forward to this afternoon and tomorrow. Dr. Hill's going to walk you through the cycle of immunity, and we'll see the specific essential oils you use each day to build up your immunity. When you build up your immunity, you can then build up your community. You know what I'm saying? We'll also go to unveil the latest research on dōTERRA On Guard that might be surprising to the world, but they're things we suspected for years. We'll see you this afternoon at 2 p.m. Mountain Daylight Time.